The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Project Nerd as a whole. In the 70s and 80s, the United States was at an impasse with the Soviet Union. Best known as the Cold War, the budding tension between the two countries was founded on many things, but most of it being the structure and destructive behavior of the USSR's Communist Party. The Soviet leader, Leonid Brezhnev, offered nothing special to the party. He spoke his mind, was brash, and didn't fit the bill of a normal politician. This helped him cement a stronghold over a party that started showing loyalty to him over a country very quickly. Brezhnev often awarded himself accolades and medals, praising himself publicly on many occasions. He shut down opposition with half-truths, full-on lies, and opinions he decided were in fact real. The corrupt plutocrats that made up the Communist Party knew that if they fell in line and promoted Brezhnev's half-witted and false ideologies, they would continue to gain power and wealth. So they did just that. As that system grew, it created a dangerous precedent. Anybody who opposed the party, of course, was a follower of Western imperialism and labeled a traitor. Anybody in the party who even so much as questioned Brezhnev's was denounced, removed from office, and left with a disintegrating political future. The entire process became so clear and so obvious that after a while, it didn't even pretend to be something else. It knew what it was and it embraced it. Such corruption, fairy tales, mockingly laughing right in the face of Russian citizens everywhere. For those not familiar with history, Brezhnev and his loyalists did lose their power, but not before laws were changed that heavily impacted minorities, specifically those of Jewish descent. And global actions had been taken, including an invasion on Afghanistan, the Russian military shooting down a civilian-filled 747, and tension that escalated Vietnam and nearly led to World War III. Not to mention the lasting impact it has had on Russia, with corruption, government control over what is declared truth in science, and one of the largest divisions between the wealthy and the working class the world has known. If that familiarity and what happened in Brezhnev's USSR to what Trump is doing within the GOP isn't painfully obvious at this point, your bias is showing, and it's showing badly. The fears of what Trump and a newly retooled GOP can do, and likely will do, should downright frighten Americans, even the conservative ones. And if you think this comparison is a stretch, well, first, you aren't paying attention, and second, that's why we're talking politics again, right here on Project Nerds Diving Deep.
I could let them know about the sorrow and the happiness that the future has in store for them. Maybe they could learn from it.
Let's dive deep.
Let's dive right in.
We're gonna dive deep into this.
Let's deep dive into this.
This is Diving Deep.
This is Diving Deep.
This is Diving Deep.
It seemed as if for the briefest of moments that what the Republican Party was for the past 4 years under Trump's influence was going to be just a blip. It seemed that the party was going to retool in order to regain power. And it seemed that this country had reconsidered ever letting that much power go to such a horrible shell of a human. And it seemed, at least in regards to politics, that the laziest generation voting was ready to speak up and finally take this country back. Now, I could point specifically to January 6th as the single day we were reminded that change wasn't coming. But it seems that in each passing day of 2021, we were reminded the Republican Party's true colors are Trump's hateful influence. Right now, the GOP is embracing being the worst of us. That is, they are taking every terrible thing humans can do and doing it without apology, without hesitation, and without accountability. Now, dangerous actions we saw under Trump, like this party, without any remorse, being in power when they continuously dismissed a growing global pandemic in order to not just save the stock market, but have time to sell their millions of shares within it. Something that led to the death of over 500,000 Americans. Many deaths that were likely, but a number that grew exponentially due to that poor and corrupt leadership. But that danger has continued as the party knowingly and openly has lied for many months and is still lying about a free and fair election, an election that was proven to be fair by Republican judges all the way up to the Supreme Court that has 3 of Trump's appointees on it. And because of that lie, an act of domestic terrorism took place, leading to the death of 5 people and publicly showcasing to the world a huge hole in our national security, an insurrection that has still not seen a single leader of it be held accountable. And now we're continuing to see things We have politicians who sold fear and lies to voters in order to deregulate and profit on the energy in Texas, now tell more lies and even flee to Cancun in order to skirt accountability. And guess what? Those Texans will line up in the next few elections and put these supposed lesser of two evils into power again and again, even as they watch children die from freezing to death that another storm of this magnitude can still cause again in the near future. And I haven't even begun to break down individual Republican politicians who not only remain powerful, but gain more loyalty by showing some of the most disgusting and dangerous behaviors we've seen politicians show in some time. This is disgusting, this is dangerous, and this is supported by more than 70 million Americans without hesitation and without guilt. This is the worst of us. This wasn't a 4-year blip. This wasn't just Trump. The worst of us title doesn't belong to a select few Republicans. It belongs to the entire party. What the first 2 months of 2021 has taught us is that Trump was not a Republican mistake, but rather the actual voice of the Republican Party and its voters. This Trumpism, this MAGA culture, this embracing of white supremacy and bigotry was always there, hiding in the shadows and fearfully showing itself now and then in this country. It didn't start with Trump, but Trump's embracement of it and his ability to sell people on so easily dismissing facts and reality have allowed it all to come out of the shadows and fester right in front of our faces. Some of the deepest and most dividing issues that are hurting this country, centered around the dismissal of diversity and the fact that all are equal, is the result of more than 70 million people being, quote, okay with it, or voting for what their party gave them. But they're more than just okay with it. Let's get honest for a while. If you vote for a man who openly refuses to condemn white nationalists during a presidential debate, you're supporting racism. If you vote for a man who has more than 24 cases of sexual harassment, assault, and rape against him, you're supporting sexism. If you vote for a man who has his personal protectors pepper spray and assault peaceful protesters so he can awkwardly pose in front of a church, a building he never regularly stepped into during his time in the political spotlight, you aren't living by the words of your Jesus. And it angers me. It angers me to see smart people, especially the ones that taught me to stand up for what I stand up for, allowing this to happen. But that anger isn't what's driving this conversation. Because of this acceptance, nay, because of this approval by those Republican voters, people are suffering, people are hurting, and my point today is people are dying. We're going to look at some examples, and let's use the recent events as Texas as a starting point. What happened in Texas wasn't actually that shocking. From the failed power grid 6 months after Texas Republicans were knocking on California for the same, to Abbott's open and blatant lies on TV, all the way to Ted Cruz's best Marie Antoinette impression. The state of Texas has acted as if being liberal is a disease. Shortly after a huge forecasted and expected winter storm hit the normally warm state of Texas, that power grid faltered, and it faltered hard. Children froze to death. People are still without power, and those that were able to crank up the heat and ride this out, well, some of them are paying 5-figure energy bills. A fear, one that the Republican Party so strongly planted in its voters' mind, led to pain and suffering and death. And while it was happening, those same Republican leaders wasted no time instilling more fear in their constituents' minds about things that didn't even actually impact what really happened. Governor Abbott, the Republican governor of a state that has been controlled end to end by the GOP for more than 2 decades, blamed everything from green energy, the new Green Deal, a proposal that's not even in practice, congresswomen from the Northeast who have no control or say over Texas's power, and of course, current President Joe Biden. Abbott, without hesitation, knowingly lied on television to the people in his state. He never took an ounce of responsibility or never lended a moment of strength to his people. Meanwhile, the so highly praised and loved Ted Cruz, a person that is worse than the scum you scrape off your bathroom tile, was on his way to Cancun. And what did he do after that went public? He lied. He placed blame. He called other people assholes. and he sure as hell didn't quarantine when he came back. Cruz said he was just flying overnight to drop off his daughters, something debunked 3 different ways. Cruz then blamed the person that leaked the text change, as if the changes were in fact that fault. And Cruz, as an attempt to save face, immediately returned from crowded airports in a foreign country to pose for pictures of him handing out water, unquarantined. This is the same Ted Cruz that to this day doesn't back down from known lies about the election. This is the same Ted Cruz that worships the ground Donald Trump walks on, even after he stood on a stage with Trump while Trump insulted Cruz's father and wife. And this is the same Ted Cruz that met with Trump's legal team during an impeachment trial in which Cruz was serving as a member of the jury. And this is the same Ted Cruz that while Joe Biden and Beto O'Rourke are in Texas, he's at a conference in Florida. Don't take this the wrong way. I ache for Texas. That was my home. That's my state. At least it was up until recently. It was a place that I took great pride in. I know so many people down there, many of whom were impacted by the storm and the outages. But this was all their choice. They asked for it. When you lie with the devil, you're going to get burnt. Or in this case, you're going to freeze. Texas, or at least most of the Texans within it, signed up for exactly what happened by electing these terrible and hateful politicians. They chose people who sold them on the fact that any regulation or any reform, even over their electrical grid, is socialism. And then they sold them that socialism was communism. The word socialism was coined in the mid-1700s by Henry de Saint-Simon as a word to define the counter of individualism. It is defined as a political and an economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the entire community. Socialism is allowing all of us, yes, 331 million of us, to own and regulate everything. Goods produced, medical care, taxation, governing, policing, schools, and so forth and so forth. Socialism is not the act of a progressive-minded, legally passed legislation that better serves the community by adjusting tax dollars to update or put in place new government-ran programs, such as programs that would help better regulate a power grid in the state of Texas. It's not even close to socialism. But as those Republican voters, the ones freezing, sit there and spew things like, quote, all politicians do it, and quote, both parties are the same, we see that they are anything but the same. Sure, Democrats are corrupted millionaires looking to make a career out of controlling our lives and helping big business. But if I have sat on this podcast time and time again, openly criticizing the Republican Party because it's not even a contest, one of these parties isn't just the worst. It's openly embracing being the worst, and it's using it as a tactic to win. Fear, hate, white nationalism, white power, women as second-class citizens, guns being more important and accessible than healthcare, and businesses being treated like people, no, better than people. This is the ideology of one party, one Republican Party. And at the very least right now, a vote for those in that party embraces it and is a vote for all terrible things. Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, Governor Abbott, Louis Gohmert, Jim Jordan, and yes, Donald Trump are the short list of some of the most dangerous people in this country right now. Their lies, their acceptance and approval and promotion of hate, and their desire to do whatever it takes to benefit themselves and their career is damaging this country and the people in it, even those that vote for them. And I'm going to make this personal. No, it's not me that's causing a divide in my family. In fact, I spent the past few years thinking my conservative family members were outside of this dangerous, conspiracy-filled Republican echo chamber that has caused so many problems and has perpetuated so much hate and pain in this country. But apparently I was wrong. In sharing facts, not opinions, and not even calling them out, I've been told by that same family that I was wrong for making them feel that certain level of guilt. I was told that that guilt for supporting this evil was not on them, but rather on me because I was calling out truths behind the very people they not only voted for, but openly continue to support and embrace. My sister has unfollowed and unfriended me on all social media platforms. My mother has called me accusingly and angry. My other family members making more excuses for why this bigotry the Republican Party is so eagerly embracing and flaunting is warranted. The conversation of when did he become so liberal is a normal thing down there with my family. The news and truth I share are dismissed without research, consideration, or even a thought. I'm told, quote, both sides deserve to be heard, but every time I present hard evidence in a conversation, the opinions my family members counter my facts with are really only what they want to hear. But why am I airing my dirty laundry here for all to listen? Why am I stating things that are going to lead to more arguments with those family members when they stumble upon this podcast? Because sometimes the truth hurts, and the painful truth right now, once again, is that the Republican ideology is destroying this country, and it's lifting the worst of us to the top. And if I haven't proven my point and calling people out, here are a few more examples. Marjorie Taylor Greene, the aforementioned freshman congresswoman from Georgia, meaning somebody newly elected post-Trump, has taken shape as one of the worst. In the past 2 months, she's managed to publicly call school shootings a hoax in order to invoke tighter gun laws. She's openly embraced dangerous and debunked QAnon's conspiracies. She's verbally assaulted other members of Congress. And just last week, across the hall from Illinois Rep. Mary Newman's office, a member of Congress whose daughter is transgender posted a sign stating that there are only two genders, starting a war with that person. Even if she actually believes that to be true, who the hell gets off on posting that sign and antagonizing somebody's child? Enter Tucker Swanson McNear Carlson, the heir to the Swanson food fortune, a loud and dickish voice for the modern-day Republican constituent. Let's just share a few recorded actual quotes from one of the most prominent voices of the right. This is all true, and these are not my words, so I apologize up front if this is offensive. Carlson's comments in regard to teacher Rachel Holt, then 34, having sex with a 13-year-old male student. Quote, "So my point is that teachers like this, not necessarily this one in particular, but they are doing a service to all 13-year-old girls by taking the pressure off. They are pressure relief valve, like the kind you have on your furnace." What the hell? How about when he talked about Martha Stewart's daughter, Alexa, in 2006? Quote, "She doesn't seem a little cunty. I mean, you said it. I'm just agreeing with you. I don't use that word because it's offensive." He said it and then said he doesn't use that word. On the elimination of rape shield laws, also in 2006, Carlson said, quote, "If I'm alleging rape, I have the protection of anonymity. I can say whatever I want while hiding by being anonymous, while the person I accuse, whether he's guilty or not, has his life destroyed. That's totally unfair." Let's talk about unfair. Rape and the people you support who have knowingly raped people. And let's stay in 2006, when he referred to Iraq as, quote, "a crappy place filled with a bunch of, semi-illiterate primitive monkeys." Also claiming that Iraqis don't use toilet paper or forks and are, quote, "just awful." But 2006 is capped off with Tucker Carlson's public and recorded comments about President Obama, where he, quote, said, "How is he black, for one thing? He has one white parent, one black parent. I don't know how black he is, but I'm sure he's a good basketball player." Unbelievable. And there's the comments against women again. Let's move on to 2007, where he said, quote, "I mean, I love women, but they're extremely primitive. They're basic. They're not that hard to understand. And one of the things they hate more than anything is weakness in a man." God, this guy's an idiot. And in 2008, he noted, quote, "Everyone's embarrassed to be a white man," before he stated that white men deserve credit for, quote, "creating civilization." And on then Supreme Court nominee in 2010, Elena Kagan, now a justice, by the way, he said, quote, "I got to be honest with you. I don't like her, and I wouldn't vote to confirm her if I were a U.S. senator. But I do feel sorry for her in that way. I feel sorry for unattractive women. I mean, it's nothing they did. You know she didn't. Nobody deserves that, and men are just mean. No, it's just absolute fundamental, physical. The problems with her are fundamental. She's never going to be an attractive woman." Wow. And to this day, on Fox News, he still continues to preach hate, sell conspiracies, and tell lies. So much so that Fox legal team, while defending Carlson in court, stated the quote, "Any right-minded viewer would know what he shares on his show is not news or facts." This puts Rush Limbaugh to shame. And if that person doesn't represent you, the Republican voter, then why is Carlson one of the few names so prominently thrown around for the GOP's return to power in 2024? Everything he has said, everything Green does, every lie out of Cruz's mouth, and every mug step back into power Trump takes is at the hands of you, the Republican constituents. Every single constituent. You don't get to tell children growing up they are who they associate themselves with and then turn around and think you aren't tied to this filth when you vote for them. I'm getting angry, maybe a little ranty, so let's return to our history lesson. It's important to know that Brezhnev was eventually replaced by a man that thought much differently than him, Mikhail Gorbachev. Gorbachev is best known as the last communist leader over the USSR, and he was a man that tried to bring reform and save the country from the damage that the dangerous loyalist era caused. He's far from perfect, and he is a communist himself. But there was nothing he could do anyways. The country fell to pieces, literally pieces, as the USSR no longer exists. It seemed as if a civil war within the Republican Party might be brewing. But in late February, everybody's least favorite Mitch McConnell, stated he would once again endorse Trump if the Donald decided to run once again on the GOP ticket in 2024. This was the same McConnell who just weeks prior said, quote, "Former President Trump's actions preceding the riot were a disgraceful dereliction of duty." And quote, "The leader of the free world cannot spend weeks thundering that shadowy force that are stealing our country and then feign surprise when people believe him and do reckless things." The obvious reason for McConnell's change of pace is what a growing partition in the Republican Foundation would do for Mitch and his loyalists' future in D.C. In a new Suffolk University USA Today survey, it is reported that 46% of Republicans are willing to follow Trump to a new party if things don't get resolved with him and the rest of the grand old party leaders. This caused more than a dozen Republican congressmen to miss a vote on legislation about pandemic aid for this country this past week so they could attend CPAC, the conference that labels itself for conservative people, but has proved to be nothing but a Trump ego booster and mass hate spreader, as seen from Trump Jr.'s comments about it should be renamed to TPAC, to Hawley's comments where he was openly praised for still lying about the election, and even the questions around the stage's design and its ties to Nazis. Seriously, this is the conference where Ted Cruz, who is not in Texas helping his state, was screaming the words freedom on that stage shaped like a Nazi symbol, while those attending fought to get photos with a golden idol or statue of Trump that was made in Mexico. You can't make this stuff up, people. Loyalty to party, or more so, one's selfish profitability, continues to be the priority of a Republican Party that has gotten so far away from just politics that our country's very future is in jeopardy. Trump's stronghold over Republicans, and therefore America, could have been diluted. No, it wasn't going to be fully removed, but it could have been impacted. If anything, his loyalist voting to acquit during the impeachment trial just made him stronger. It made the white nationalists and other domestic terrorists who stormed the Capitol stronger. And the stronger Trump gets, all while acting completely like Trump acts, other politicians see that ability to not hold back and to embrace this hate and bigotry as a ticket to a lengthy and successful political career. And if you think I'm overblowing it on the danger, well, just look at what the party is still hitching onto by supporting Trump. They're voting for a man that lost the popular vote twice, lost all the court appeals when trying to lie about it, lost the House and the Senate, lost millions doing business, lost his TV shows, and will continue to lose court cases over the next few years. But they still see him as the winner, as the leader, as the future. Let this sink in. The Republican congressmen and women that just voted unanimously against the new relief package for American citizens almost voted unanimously in favor of not impeaching Trump. and the 45 Republican senators that voted to acquit Trump of impeachment are all ones this week who will vote down that aid package as well. Dangerous. So to make my final point, because of the party in power during the year of 2020, that would be the Republican Party, 500,000 Americans have died from a virus. No matter what, yes, people would have died from this. But when Trump's tweets about how under control this was came into play, it's painfully clear that his team is responsible for a large percentage of these deaths. The Trump's administration handling of this pandemic was dangerous. The Republican Party's ability to tie government regulations to socialism is a fear tactic, one that just cost the lives of possibly dozens in Texas, therefore making this tactic incredibly dangerous. And Republicans continue to not just fight for guns, but embrace them and trying to lighten the laws. Weapons that lead to 430 unintentional fatalities just in 2019 alone. Again, incredibly dangerous. They also continue to tie healthcare, welfare, and unemployment to socialism, costing the lives of hundreds of thousands every year. Again, dangerous. They even so boldly deny science and call climate change a myth, not caring that their grandchildren and great-grandchildren will suffer. Dangerous. So why do I make such a big deal about the Republican Party week in and week out here? Why do I work so hard pleading with my family to see the light, showing them facts, truth, and science? And why do I sound so angry when these things happen? People are dying. And although people will always die, those numbers will continue to skyrocket as long as we allow Republicans to play this dangerous game they're playing and go unchecked doing so. Did I piss you off? Was my political topic too much? Maybe this isn't the forum for it? Well, too damn bad. It needs to be said, but more importantly, something needs to be done. Will you do something about it? Will you vote every year, not just in 2020, like your life depends on it? Because no matter your race, gender, age, or location in this country, your life does greatly depend on it right now. Because one party's platform becomes more about lying than telling the truth, knowingly letting it cost lives. It's time to be honest and say it out loud. Republicans, you're the worst of us. That's our show. Thank you again for listening to Diving Deep on Project Nerd. I know I promised our show would veer away from the politics during 2021, with many other topics on my agenda, but with another disgraceful act in the political sphere, being quiet just isn't an option. This might make me sound like a broken record, but I have to say it again, just like I said it last time. When acts of terror like this are tolerated, when hate is promoted, and when an openly racist and hateful person can become the president in the 21st century, when lies and harmful conspiracies can be accepted as facts by millions, it's time to speak up. It's time to stand up, and it's time to say enough. It's time for 85 million Americans to become 300 plus million Americans. There are no lanes when we talk about humanity, when we talk about rights, when we talk about extinguishing hate. It's time to trump that hate. Diving Deep is, well, diving deep in 2021. Social media, defining socialism, school loans, the movie industry, comic conventions, and yes, of course, politics are all on the agenda this year. Stay tuned to every other Monday for more Diving Deep. And for more exciting Project Nerd podcasts, head over to projectnerd.com/podcast to find over a dozen active series across multiple topics and genres. That's project-nerd.com/podcast.